Hey everybody, welcome back to Spent. I'm your host, Preet Banerjee, and every week I speak to Derek Fung and we dive into the data of some of the largest purchase panels in North America to see how people are really spending their money. Derek, welcome back to the show.
Hey, it's always good to be here, Preet.
So this week we're going to dive into credit card debt. Last week we started talking about income changes. Now we're going to take a look at credit card debt. I want to know, have you been able to use your credit card as much as before COVID all started?
Yeah, no, it's been interesting to see all the credit card companies tweak their programs. I have both U.S. and Canadian credit cards, and definitely, ton of online e-commerce, Amazon, Uber Eats, grocery. Yeah, definitely haven't been using it as much as I normally would, but. A lot of these programs are adding a ton of incentive. With my American Express, for example, they're doing 4%, 4% back on travel, and something crazy like 8% on food restaurants. And on top of that, you can redeem your points for 2 times the value. So for many of
Oh, wow.
these, categories, you're getting double-digit
It's
percent back.
interesting because those two categories that you mentioned, travel and eating out at restaurants, that's what I am not doing. But
Yeah.
I know that different parts of the economies in Canada and the US are opening up at different rates. So it's an interesting incentive, but at the same time, people are like, do I want to get onto a plane where I'm packed in with a bunch of people who aren't wearing masks?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at what's actually been happening with the panel that you guys have
Yep.
um, dug into the data. So the first thing we're going to talk about is that yes, most people are using credit cards less, but they're also paying smaller percentages of their balances. Walk us through what's going on.
Yeah, I'd say, because of the uncertainty with COVID, consumers have been generally spending less. When you look at Chase, for example, year over year, we're still down, 25, 30% versus where we were at last year. The other interesting fact that we've seen is that millennials, the younger generation, are starting to spend, more than the older generation. But generally speaking, lot less spending on credit cards. At the same time, a lot, smaller balances and also smaller payments, given just general decrease in consumer spending.
Right. Okay. Let's take a look at the next chart here where we break it down by income bracket first on the left, and then on the right we take a look at it based on the change in income. So let's start with the chart on the left. So these are the change in balance in pink, and in green are the change in payments, and this is broken down by income brackets.
Yeah, I'd be curious what you think of all of this. Generally from what I see, it's not surprising that hey, if you are making less, you're also spending less. You're carrying less of a balance, and you're paying less of that balance. And then when you move to the right, in higher income brackets, you're also seeing a decrease. So generally, a decrease across the board in credit card balances and credit card payments. Less of a decrease, if you're actually making higher income. But yeah, it's interesting to see this isn't just one group that's been, reducing their debt load.
Yeah, what does stand out to me is that top income bracket of the 100K plus. So they have the 12% drop in balances. So I think part of the reason for that is, they are probably spending more frivolously. And because so many businesses were shut down, they probably didn't have the opportunity to spend that money. Plus, there's some people who are just saying, hey, there might be a storm coming. I'm going to rein in the spending a little bit. But they also had the smallest decrease in the change in payments. And I think what happens for a lot of people is they don't really even look at the balances. They just say, well, my amount of money that I want to put towards my credit card payment every month is $500, $1,000, whatever it is. And it kind of hovers in and around there.
Right.
I think it might be some more time before we see some real change there. But I think that's
Yeah.
why people in the higher income bracket are still seeing lower of a change in payment. because they also are least affected so far by job losses, because in that income bracket, these are the more white collar jobs which can be done from home,
Yeah,
whereas people on the lower end in the income spectrum are more likely to suffer full income loss because those are the jobs that get cut first and they
yeah,
can't be done at home. But
yeah.
yeah, it's
Or
interesting. Sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
Or you could argue also, what the data here doesn't show is that some of the higher income brackets, these individuals may have, experienced a pay cut. So if their pay has been cut, they're also spending less. And also generally across the board, consumer discretionary spend has decreased
Yeah.
as the economy is closed and as consumers focus more on, necessities and consumer staples like groceries, furniture, um, things that they need.
Yeah, and so if we shift to the chart on the right here, this is pretty self-explanatory, nothing mind-blowing here. Essentially, if you have a full income loss, so you've lost your job, then yeah, you're going to have the biggest decrease in the change in your payments. You're also probably going to be spending less because you've got more of that scarcity mindset. You're just saying, well, there's no money coming in the door. I'm not going to spend as much as before. And whatever money I do have, I'm going to pay smaller payments on my credit card balances just in case I'm out of income for a long time. I don't think there's really anything earth shattering there. But if we now switch to, this is interesting to me, the percentage of balance paid broken up by income brackets and then again by the change in income status. This is not normally a metric that you sort of see in the mainstream news. They always talk about, the change in the overall debt loads, et cetera. But in terms of the payments, when you get your credit card bill, how much of that balance do you pay off per month?
Yeah.
This is what this is showing, is the
Yeah.
percentage of balance paid every month. So what do we see here, Derek?
I mean, it's just pretty interesting, a testament to how consumers across U.S. and Canada think about their credit cards. It's still very much so as a way to carry debt, and often when you look at this data, it's a lot of consumers are still spending beyond their means and not paying off the whole balance in full. You could argue, interest rates are coming down, but it's interesting to see that the number is still high 20, low 30% is the balance that a lot of these consumers are only paying off versus the 100% of the debt that they're carrying on the card.
Right. And so, as a personal finance commentator, I have to say to people, you should not be carrying balances on your credit card when you can avoid it, which is most of the time. So, this percentage of balances paid every month should be 100% in my mind. So, if you're in the position to pay off your credit card balances in full, you should do that.
Do it.
And for me, it hurts me to see these numbers being this low. But then, if we shift over to the chart on the right, which is the percentage of balance paid off by income change. So, you have no change or increase. So these are people that haven't lost their job or have seen an increase in income. Then in the middle, you got people who haven't lost their jobs, but they've seen a decrease in income. And then on the right, we have people who have lost their jobs and they have a full income loss. And yeah, I mean, it's not really surprising. Post-COVID in green, you saw the biggest drop for the people who lost their jobs. Now, this last one here, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Essentially, what this data is saying is that younger people are paying a bigger percentage of their balances. And this was pre-COVID as well as right now. So at the top of the chart, we see younger people, and as a percentage of their balances being paid off, it's around 30%. And you can also break it up by change in income. But generally, the trend here is that younger people pay off a bigger percentage of their balances both before COVID and also right now. What are your thoughts on why that is?
Yeah, I'd say a couple of things. I mean, one, younger people are newer to the workforce, and I'd say that the relative hit to their income may not be as big with the addition of the stimulus checks. And so, really, when they think about discretionary spending, may not have been as largely impacted as the older generation. I'd say younger people also, myself included, having gone through the financial crisis in 0809, and just being constantly reminded that, hey, credit cards are meant to be used in a way in which you're supposed to pay off the balance and not keep a balance, given the high interest. I think I just feel like we've been trained a certain way versus the different generations. Again, when you look at the data that Chase released, it is the millennial generation that's leading the pack out of from in terms of spending. And you could also argue that younger generation, their income levels are increasing versus the older demographic. Maybe they're getting closer to retirement, and their income levels are peaking versus the younger generation is still, well on its way. So I'd say it's all of these things combined that I think is leading to the younger demographic, carrying lower balances and paying off their balances and just generally spending more versus the baby boomers.
Yeah, I think there's maybe two big themes. One is certainly younger people are more debt averse because they've just had this onslaught of debt, right? It's a crushing load from an anxiety point of view. You've gone through the great financial crisis. So these things are they leave indelible marks in your mind. But also, I'll tell you, this is the cynic in me, you just haven't had enough time to rack up debt and build up those bad habits over long periods of time. So the overall balances on credit cards might be a little bit lower, so it would be easier to pay a bigger percentage. So that's probably a factor as well.
Yeah, but the key is pay off your debt. I think the key is you look at these numbers and it was quite surprising. And for anyone who's watching, I think the key message here is the sooner you can pay off your debt, the quicker you can get out of debt. And credit cards aren't meant to be used in that way to keep balances.
And also it's worth pointing out that some people are fixated on reward programs and what kind of cash back you get and incentives for spending those points and whatnot. But if you focus on that and don't focus on the fact that you're carrying a balance and paying 20% interest, it's a net negative for you, right? So
you do the math, even though you're getting 4% back, 10%, whatever. If you're carrying any balance, you're net, long run losing money because you're paying 20% to carry that balance.
Yeah, exactly. So reward programs are great when you don't carry a balance. If you do carry a balance, then your focus should not be on the rewards. It should be on paying off those balances. That's probably the most rewarding thing you can do for your finances. Great. Derek, always great to talk to you. Next week, I think there's part 3 in the consumer finance series that Cardify is putting out.
Yeah.
And I see that your battery has exhausted, but I know you're still there.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
I can hear you. Yeah. You want to switch to your?
I'll just talk.
All right. You can just be the voice of
the Zoom fatigue, as they say.
That's right.
I'll just be a voice in the dark. But a lot of stuff
this
coming
is
out.
great. This is what happens in real life in meetings and whatnot. So your battery's exhausted, but let's cap it off with talking about part 3 in this series, which I think is you guys teased that you're going to take a look at the change in spending particulars.
Exactly. Yeah. Different categories as things open up. What are people spending on? How are they spending? A lot of really interesting data that we're seeing there.
Right. Yeah. As things open up, maybe people can, I don't know, buy more batteries.
More batteries is definitely what I need to buy more of. Sure.
All right. Great. Thanks so much, Derek. We'll talk to you next week, and again, we'll see your beautiful face at the
Maybe next time I'll have a haircut too, so we'll lose the hat.
All right, thanks, Derek.
See you soon.